So, my dear ones, here we are, ready to take it on, whatever it is Spirit has to present to us today. And the topic is the power of love and forgiveness, and understanding the amazing connection between those two things, love and forgiveness. And this is one thing that we really could today get straight in our minds for all time and be good with it. And that's what I'm knowing we're all here to do. Because so many of us walk around under the terrible weight of condemnation. We have this sense of condemnation that comes from ourselves, from others, and indeed we feel condemned sometimes by life itself, God's self. And it gets in the way of all kinds of things when it comes to us truly coming into our own and feeling what it is to be in celebration of life and living. And so we're endeavoring to understand that more fully today so that we can release that weight and let that weight go. And that condemnation is common to us all, and it's a race consciousness that we have picked up over many, many years. And where does that condemnation come from? It comes from a sense of ourselves not being enough, not being loved enough, cared for enough, cherished enough, and certainly not being loving or cherishing or caring ourselves enough. Where does that come from? Well, that comes from way back when people did their best to endeavor to describe what was going on in human beings and how life was. And so you go back to ancient times, and those of us in the West go back to biblical times, Old Testament times, and we see that the picture that we get from the creator of our beings, God, self, is not exactly one that you can really wrap yourself around and say, yummy, 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 because you get a kind of an idea of a God who loves us one day and smites us the next. So we have a kind of a love-hate relationship with God, or, you know, it's a kind of a hug-slap relationship. And you never know whether God is reaching out to hug you or slap you. You're not quite sure. But you want to do the best you can to stay on the good side of God. So we learn how to placate, and we try to manipulate this thing called God, or whatever it is that has control over us and takes charge of us and so on, or we try to figure it out as best we can, and it doesn't work because we're figuring it out with a finite mind, trying to figure out what the infinite is. So we have all that to contend with. But you have to remember that the ancient Hebrews were really only one step away from their pagan neighbors, you know? I mean, they had all that influence around them. And so you can understand why it took them a while to get to know the one God, the God of love and light and life, that Moses was endeavoring to present to them and so on. And sometimes they got it and sometimes they didn't, and that continues on to this very present day. But in the midst of all of that, you had those great ones that came amongst us, the great prophets. You have, thank God for Jeremiah shouting and bawling all over the place to those ears that could hear him, as he said, you know, this is what God is saying to you. I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have loved you with an everlasting love. But, you know, that's not exactly what was heard by us as we were smited and slapped and all the rest of it around the place. We couldn't hear those words, I have loved you with an everlasting love, because there were too many prophets of doom and gloom, you know, saying God was going to get us. God was going to get us. God was going to get us. And I can remember hearing a mother say to a child in the bus one day when I was, you know, in high school, you know, holy God won't love you anymore because you've been so bad, you know. And you pick up that, and then that kind of scares us, because after all, isn't God everything and all to us? And if holy God is not going to love us, well then, false Caesar, forget about it. I may as well be my bad self, because I'm in hell anyway and I'm going to hell anyway, and so what's the point? I can never get out of this kind of quagmire of sin and wickedness and evil and so on, because that seems to be what the composition of me is, and that's what the world tells me, and it is reinforced all over the place, so that I get that sense of myself. And once I get that sense of myself, well then it's an up uphill battle out of that hole I have dug myself into, or have been dug into, as the case may be. So today you and I get to figure all of this out once and for all. Isn't that wonderful? In 20 minutes we can do all of that after eons of time and a lifetime to this far, but we can do it. That's why Spirit wants to share this with us all. So you have that going on, you see, and then once we get that sense, we have that awareness of being victimized, and we feel ourselves to be less than and lacking in so very many ways. So we put on the front and we put on the disguise, and then we start pretending. We have the imposter syndrome thing going on, and that is something that we have to release and let go of, because all of that simply means is that we're over-identifying with our false identity, and we're certainly over-identifying with our humanity. And when we over-identify with our humanity, or only identify with our humanity, we can get ourselves into all kinds of scraps and scrapes and trouble, because that's the lesser part of us and it's not the truth of us. And so if we look to the master teacher Jesus, who taught us how to go about the business of realizing ourselves, it is by identifying with our divinity. And when we identify with our divinity more and more and more, the humanity has less power and control over us. And as he did, that's how he became the conscious Christ. He identified so much with his divinity that there was no longer any separation between himself and the divine, and he could say, the Father and I are one. Now, if we could do that, we would be doing what Jesus did and saying the very same thing as Jesus was able to say, the Father and I are one. So we have all of that to contend with. And the reason why we go around feeling that we're lost without love, and we haven't got enough love, and where will we get love, and love, 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 love. Well, we're like those little fishes in the ocean that are sailing around the ocean looking for the great sea. One day they'll find this great sea, not knowing they're swimming in it, but still frantically swimming around looking for this great sea. We are exactly like that. We are going out there looking for love wherever. We're swimming in the 7 seas of persons, places, and things, looking in all the wrong places for this thing called love and never finding it. Of course we're not, because we're already in it and it's in us. We are the fullness of it already, and we don't know it. Well, how did that happen? Very simply, as very small babies, we get a sense of ourselves that we are conditioned by outward circumstances. Why are we conditioned by outward circumstances? Because we're depending upon something outside of ourselves for love, for nurturing, for nourishment, and so on. And so we think that our nurturing and our nourishment and our love has to come from outside of ourselves. And we get that as a very small infant imprinted upon ourselves. So that's where it all begins. And so consequently, we learn too, as very small infants and children, to either placate the people who nurture us and nourish us, or manipulate them. Children are either manipulating you or placating you. They're either doing one or the other, because they've learned it very well from the grown-ups around them. They'll be placating you one day and they'll be manipulating you the next day, or doing the same in the same day. And that's how it is. And we continue that in our adult lives as well. We say, oh, anything for a peaceful life, give him what he wants. Oh yeah, just shut her up, just go with the flow of it, you know, just anything for a quiet life. Or we manipulate things to get our own way. And we do it unconsciously most of the time, but sometimes as adults we're very conscious of what we're doing, but we do it anyway. And so that kind of gets us, into awkward situations, to say the least, and dangerous ones, to say it, at the other end of it. And so we know how that happens. And then we have this thing called sinfulness and so on. And although people come into this teaching thinking, oh, they don't have any sin in that religion, so we'll go there, it's a good one, they don't flog you for being a wicked, terrible sinner. Well, no, we don't get out of it that easily at all, you see, because what is sin except the frustration of the spirit? What is sin sin except the concealment and the burying of the hidden splendor within us? What is sin except ignorance that causes us to bump into each other and hurt each other and fight with each other and resent each other and hate each other and do all of that? So we have the very same experiences in this teaching as in any other teaching. We just have a different take on it, that's all. But the presence of it is very palpable, very palpable. So yes, sin is with us. Sin is with us. Way back when, even the prophets and the psalmists were crying out, "My sins are always before me. Every night I flood my bed with weeping and I drench my couch with tears. And woe is me, and God is so far away from me, and God be merciful to me, this wicked sinner, and never the twain shall meet." And oh my, what a pity party all of that is. And it does no good to you or anybody else to do that, because it is written in the same scriptures of Old Testament, "Though your sins be as scarlet, I will wash them whiter than snow." But are we listening to that? Oh no, but we're listening to the wickedness and the sinfulness that we are. We're not listening, tuning into, "I have loved you with an everlasting love, and though your sin be as scarlet, I will wash it whiter than snow." No, we don't listen to that part of it. We just want to flog ourselves and do all of that to ourselves and put ourselves down, because that's the energy we've been allowed to grow within ourselves, and that's what we have identified with. And even when we are our best and good selves, we kind of are very wary of it and are not quite believing it, because, you know, the wickedness of sin and all of that. All right. So sin is indeed the frustration of the truth of our being. It's the inability to recognize ourselves as ourselves in truth. Now, then there's the problem of evil and the problem of guilt. We're handling it all this morning. Evil. So no evil exists. You'll hear people say no evil exists. Well, that's a load of baloney. Evil exists. It's all around and about, and you can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it, you can touch it, you can even be part of it yourself at times. But here's what we know about evil. It is not a power, and it is not a force, and it is not a presence separate in and of itself. It's not. There is one power and only one power in all of life and living, in all of the universe and beyond. And it's a power for good. It is greater than we are, and you and I get to use it for good every moment of our lives. One power. So what is evil? It's the misuse of that power. That's what evil is. You can choose this day a blessing or a curse because you're a free thinker. You have free conscious reign. And you can choose this day the blessing or the curse. You can choose good or you can choose evil. The choice is yours. And it is a choice that when we take it on the negative side of life and choose evil, it is because of ignorance, ignorance, ignorance. There is no way in heaven or anywhere else that you and I would choose evil if we were in our right mind, because we know that the target of evil, as I said before, is a target that will always be hit, bullseye every time, and the target is you. So every time you choose evil, you're sending that and directing that right to your own self. It'll come back at you, and it's going to nip you in the proverbial. That's the way it works. But so does good. Every time you choose good, that good hits its target, bullseye every time, and comes back at you, blessing you, blessing you, blessing you. So that's what evil is, misuse of the one power through ignorance. Because if we were using our intuitive intelligence, we would never choose anything but that which is good and very good. We would never be anything but the best of ourselves. We would never, ever, ever, ever cause any disturbance, annoyance, hurt to ourselves or another, because we would know who we are. And it's because we don't know who we are, we create our difficulties in life. We sin. We do evil. What is evil in your sight I have done, O Lord. Be merciful to me, a sinner. St. Paul, why is it I do the things I don't want to do, and I don't do the things I want to do? It's upon us all. It's before us all. And it's ours to choose. Well, we do that because, again, we're over-identified with our humanity, and we think that's who and what we are. We think we're that caprice, we think we're that fickle, we think we're that changeable, we think we're that moody, and so on and so forth, and that's what we become. Okay, then, why is it that we think that God will somehow not forgive us? Not fully. How is it we don't believe in the forgiveness that is there for us to embrace? Well, several reasons for that. Number one, we have created God in our own image and likeness. We have made God into a superhuman being. And because we will not forgive each other or ourselves or anybody else for that matter, because darn it, I'm entitled to my resentment because I've every good reason to be resentful. And if only you knew what the circumstances were, you wouldn't be asking me to let it go and give it up and all of that. You didn't have the experience, I did. So leave me alone. If I want to be bitter, I'll be bitter. And that's all there is to it. So if we are like that in ourselves and with each other, we think God is the same. We think God is just as moody as we are, just as capricious as we are, just as fickle and as changeable as we are. So consequently, we can never fully feel that we're forgiven or that we're fully loved always, no matter what. We don't believe the words, I have loved you with an everlasting love. That means I love you always and ever. Doesn't matter how hateful you are, how spiteful you are, how resentful you are, how bitter you are, how awful you are, how obnoxious you are, I love you. That's godly love, divine love. And it remains the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. You see, because we don't love like that, we can't grasp that. We don't get that. We have to stop making God in our own image and likeness and look upon God as the essence and as the principle of love, which is life and light. We have to start seeing God like that. Now, God is not a judge. And I'm going to knock you out of your seats now, and I'm going to tell you this. God never forgives sin. You will never be forgiven by God. Never. Stop waiting for God to forgive you. God is not going to forgive you. Why? Because God knows nothing of sin. Can know nothing of sin. If God knew sin, God would know judgment. If God was in judgment, God would know right and wrong. There is no wrongness in God. There is no judgment in God. There is no sense of sinfulness in God. God is love, 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 love. Totality of wholeness, perfection, pureness, and completeness of being. God can only be God and nothing else. So tough if you're waiting to be forgiven by God. It's not happening. It'll never happen, and it's not coming. Okay? Now, aligned with that is the idea, well, then what did Jesus mean when he said, you know, who can forgive sin but God alone? And what about the unforgivable sin that's mentioned in Scripture? The unforgivable sin is the sin against yourself. It's the sin of a shut down, closed mind. That's what the unforgivable sin is. You not allowing the spirit of your own truth to be revealed and released. You not willing to let that hidden splendor be expressed and released and revealed. That's the unforgivable sin. No one can forgive sin but God alone, said Jesus. What he means by that is the only thing that can forgive sin is the Christ-conscious awareness in yourself. What is the Christ within us? It is the perfect, realized spiritual man, as Ernest Holmes said. It's the spiritualized being, and the spiritualized being is the one who has achieved balance between humanity and divinity and has come into perfect alignment with the truth of being and knows the self as the self within themselves. In other words, you're the only one that can forgive yourself and other people. That's all. Since sin is a human construct, so is forgiveness. So is forgiveness. And so that's what needs to be the one that forgives. The Christ within yourself, the truth within yourself, the life within yourself, the light within yourself, the love within yourself. Oh my, who knew? Well, we know now. We know now. Now, always and ever, you and I have to keep singing the song, God is love, God is love, God is love. And we who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in us. And I have loved you with an everlasting love. You are my people. I will never give you up, says the scriptures. I have carved your name in the palm of my hand. I have worn you and wear you as a seal upon my arm, as a seal upon my heart. You are my beloved, and you are perfect. There is no flaw in you, says the God of the scriptures too. But we're not believing any of that, are we? Love one another as you have first been loved. Love is the answer to everything, the cure all to everything. Love is the healing balm and the spiritual therapy for everything. Love, 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 love. And it's not out there, and you're not missing it, and you're not lacking it. You are the fullness of it if you would only give yourself a chance to see that and be that. Now, the law of math is not going to in any way judge you for using one of its formula incorrectly. It's not going to punish you for not knowing your formulae. It's not. Neither is the law of electricity going to judge you because you know nothing about how it works. It's not going to judge you for that. Neither is the principle of love going to judge you either. Principles do not judge. They say, here, I'm available to you. Use this wonderful intelligence for your good. And if you don't, okay, you don't. There's going to be no reprisal. There's going to be no punishment. There's going to be no revenge. None of that. It's there for you to use or not to use, as the case may be. But see, we as human beings over-identifying with our humanity and lacking that sense and sensibility of the intuitive infinite intelligence within us because we haven't tapped into it, what do? We punish. We punish. We judge. We take revenge. We see reprisals. That's the way we handle evil. We punish it. And yet, does it work? No. Does war end all things? War ends nothing. War simply comes to an end. Nobody wins wars. Wars just end. They come to an end, and that's that. And that's on the large scale. You and I are warring in ourselves, too, and warring with each other, too. So all we have to do to come into that awareness of a viable life form that can flourish and can thrive and that can live in peace and joy, in fullness and plenty, in health and well-being, in loving relationships and creating beautifully and magnificently in our expression, is to understand the true nature of ourselves as love. And remember, love is something that's whole, it's complete. It's something that's generous, it's something that's kind, it's good, it's compassionate. It loves to share, it loves to give itself away. Its whole thrust is service and givingness. That's what love is. That's what you are. That's what I am. That's what our true nature is. And if we are just focused on that, the rest takes care of itself and all of the other stuff goes away. It's not in our minds, so it's not in our lives. The only thing in our minds, love, love, love. And this is the week for you and for me to ponder these things. And it is the week to make life work in our lives, to let God be God by means of each one of us, by allowing love to be love by means of each one of us, to show up as love wherever we are. And when we show up as love, we're showing up as life and light too. We're showing up as a blessing as well. So this week the challenge is be as loving as you possibly can be. In other words, be your truth self, be your best self, be the essence of yourself, be who you really are. Put aside all the facade and just show up as you. And as Eckhart Tolle, not Eckhart Tolle, but Meister Eckhart says, let God be God by means of you. So a fabulous affirmation this week for all of us is, I show up as love today. I choose love today. Love is my decision today, and it is my expression. I surrender myself to love, and I go free. It's as simple as that. These are affirmations that we can use this week so that we can stay on track and be all that we are created to be the emanation, the image, and the likeness of our Creator. And to know ourselves as Spirit knows us, as that which is good, as that which is very good. Understand we are the apple of God's eye, and be that eye. I love when Habakkuk said, Habakkuk, don't you love that name? Anybody ever call a child Habakkuk? Habakkuk, where are you, Habakkuk? Come in here, you're late for your tea. Habakkuk! Well, anyway. Habakkuk says, oh, your eyes are the eyes of such purity that you cannot behold evil. And so when Spirit looks at you, Spirit is looking at you with the eyes of purity and cannot behold evil, knows nothing of evil, sees no evil, hears no evil, speaks no evil. That's Spirit. And it could be you, and it could be me too. So I'm asking you to join me this week in being as loving and love-filled and love-giving as you possibly can be. I'm knowing we're all equal to it, so will you join me? Yes. And so it is.
Oh, beautiful for a patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam until